Hey, what's going on, guys? The next time that your CEO or your CMO asks you to build out an advertising campaign, maybe it's for a new product launch or you're targeting a new market segment. I want this campaign template to be your go-to so that you can collect your ideas, put them in a presentation, and then share them internally to key stakeholders so that people sign off on those and you get the necessary resources to launch that campaign. So I'm going to walk you through the advertising campaign template today. I'll go slide by slide. I'll explain the rationale of including all the content in each slide. And for context, just so you know, I currently run demand gen for a software company. It's a B2B software company that does around 100 million in annual recurring revenue. So let's jump into it. The first slide, this is all about just stating the goals of the campaign. You want to be very clear on what you're trying to accomplish here. And then if you achieve those goals, what the target outcomes would be. You can see that here. And then at the top, you have a nice pithy action-oriented headline to summarize the slide. Then I would go into the actual the target, the ideal customer profile of which we're targeting with our advertising. And there are all these different attributes associated with your ideal customer profile. You'll have to figure this out based on the product that you're selling. There's a series of research that we typically do here to identify the ideal customer profile. That's for a different video. You can actually see that in the ICP template that we offer as well. But you want to be clear in your campaign of exactly who you're targeting. Then that leads you into how big is the market, the total addressable market that you're going after here. And then within that total addressable market, so for example, you might define your ICP, then you go into a database like a ZoomInfo or an Apollo, and you identify how many accounts are actually in that target market that meet this criteria. Well, within that target market, it's unlikely that you're going to go after all of them. So what I recommend is getting more specific about the market that you're going to go after. And there's TAM, SAM, SOM. I find though that terminology confusing and not easily understood, and most people don't quite understand it when you're trying to present that idea. And so I just break it down to the total addressable market and then the target market, the accounts that we are going after. And this becomes more digestible and bite-sized if you're pairing your advertising campaign with more of an account-based sales approach where the sales reps are getting a targeted list of accounts to go after. And so like marketing is providing air cover, warming those leads up. Sales is actually going outbound and building those long-lasting business relationships. Once you identify the size of your market, you'll get into the persona. So you can go target these accounts, but you got to know who within these accounts you're actually going after. And so typically you will have an economic buyer, a champion who will champion the deal, and then the actual end user of your software. And so I find it important to get very specific on the titles, the responsibilities, the goals of that the personal goals and career goals of that specific person, pains, fears, why change, why now, and why our solutions. It's like you've really got to understand that to inform the marketing copy and creative and how you structure your campaign. Then we go into the specific targets of that particular campaign. And for us, since I'm on the demand gen side, when we run campaigns, we always have revenue in mind. So our intent is to build pipeline or even further up the funnel is to generate leads that convert into real qualified pipeline for the sales team. And then here's the pipeline here. and then ultimately you get down to bookings for the actual business. And so in this particular view, I've laid it out um, with the actual last quarter performance, the benchmarks for these different KPIs that you'd be tracking, and then the targets broken down to a quarterly basis and a monthly basis. And some campaigns are shorter term, just quarterly. Others are longer term, and so you actually want to see what the expectation is for MQLs, SQLs, and closed ones on a monthly basis, so that you know if you're tracking towards performance or not. And then down below here, you've got your projected conversion rates, and typically we will assume conversion rates either if you're looking at an aggregate view of conversion rates here. That's all you have. Sometimes you're limited by the amount of data that you have. You may not have benchmark ad performance data on how well paid ads are converting. And so this is an experimental campaign. And so therefore it's possible that your conversion rate actually goes down because these leads are less educated when they're coming into the top of the funnel. Although I have heard from other folks that their conversion rates actually went up with paid advertising because the organic traffic that they were generating was very low intent traffic. So it's very business specific. And then in other areas, we're actually projecting lifts in conversion from SQL to close one because we're enabling them with assets and talk tracks to improve the conversion alongside sales leaders. Next, we get into budget allocation. So you're figuring out what your targets are, and that's an important place to start. Then you have to determine, well, how much money are we going to spend, and how are we going to allocate that to content and creative at different stages of the funnel. And so here, this is an allocation across top of the funnel, middle of the funnel, and bottom of the funnel to capture and convert. We typically will allocate more budget to the bottom of the funnel. You think of the market size. Oftentimes you see the folks that are actually in market for bottom of the funnel, that's only 10% of the market, but we want to capture as much of that as possible and then drive people into the top of the funnel through the different stages of the buying journey to get them to the bottom of the funnel. But if you don't invest enough in the bottom of the funnel, what you'll find is you'll run these ads, you'll generate impressions and reach and traffic to your website, but there's not very many leads actually coming through to get to your sales team. So you want to make sure that you invest adequately here. Okay, next up. This I find, I include this in the ad campaign presentation just to demonstrate the flow of traffic and the flow of campaigns between prospecting audiences. These are net new audiences that you're bringing into your business to your website, and retargeting audiences that you are you're retargeting based on pages that they visited or all website visitors. And so this is not indicative of how you would actually do it, having every single ad type on both sides for prospecting and retargeting, but I include them there so you could delete or add based on how you want to structure your campaigns. And ultimately, this experience paired with any other marketing initiatives that you have running lead to MQLs for your sales team. All right, so far we've given a sort of a good layout of how who we're targeting in the ad campaign, how much we're going to spend, where we're going to allocate budget, how the structure of the campaign will be designed. Then we get into actual channel selection. Now, this is a process in and of itself. There's research that has to go into understanding where your target customer lives today, where you can actually reach them. I've included the big four here. And then below hand go into tactics and key metrics of how we will track this across different platforms. Then I get into the buyer journey. And so the buyer journey is helpful not only to clarify the journey that your buyer is going through, but it helps internally for your team to start to understand, well, what content types are we going to need to create to support our buyers at each stage in the journey? And then how will we serve that or distribute that content across various channels in their buyer journey? And lastly, what are the metrics or KPIs that we're going to track at each of these different stages? And so this is, I find, very illuminating in helping your team identify gaps in the content there that exists today. If you can leverage existing content, that's really helpful just in accelerating getting campaigns out. But oftentimes you have to create new content to support these campaigns. Then I go into real examples. And if you don't have an example produced for creative, it's good to give examples of other best-in-class businesses. And in this case, I included a ad example from Klaviyo and then another one from Datadog. And then you can get into the messaging of what you're going to promote in that particular ad, whether it's a brand ad or a problem ad. These are for top of the funnel. And then the destination URL. So whoever you're presenting this to knows where you're sending the traffic. And maybe that's a landing page. In some cases, we've actually promoted third-party assets just to provide credibility and social proof for our products. We've also, we make good use of the native lead forms within Facebook and LinkedIn. So this is just to help out in bringing clarity to what your ads will look like or could look like, and then the messaging and destination that you'll be sending your visitors to. Same thing goes for the middle of the funnel and then bottom of the funnel. And really this whole deck it's a ad campaign template to put together your plan, to lay out your plan so that you get approval on the plan and then you can go execute on it. And then lastly, you have to have a point of view on what this will produce from a business results standpoint. I mean, if you start out the campaign with the idea that this is not going to be economical for your business, you probably shouldn't run the campaign. And so you have to have a viewpoint that says, well, our customer acquisition cost is going to be significantly less than our lifetime value. And the baseline ratio that marketing teams will target is really 3x. And so if you can get into the 4 or 5x range, you're doing quite well. But this will be highly dependent on what your average contract value is, your gross margins, your churn rate, and then how expensive your customer acquisition cost is. But you at least have to start out and say, this is what we think it will be. And then you can do a look back and see how it actually compared to what you projected. And then lastly, this is the next steps page that says well, here's what we'll need to actually move this initiative forward. And so we'll include that here. Now, there are more complex iterations of this. You can get very granular into, if you look at the marketing budget model that we have on the site, you can see how you can allocate spend and then the projected lead flow across the various channels. That is not included this in presentation. But this should, I've used the same structure and layout before. And if you're able to pull this together and present this, I think you'll have a lot of success in getting your advertising campaigns approved and the resources required to go execute them. So I hope this is helpful. If you want, I'll include a link in the description below so that you can go download the advertising campaign template and use it yourself. See you on the next one.